The courtyard rang with laughter. It was a high, trilling sound, sharp enough to echo against the polished walls of the academy. Dozens of children darted across the practice field, their long limbs and trailing ribbons of bioluminescence weaving colorful patterns in the air. The afternoon sun caught on the crystalline dust that drifted lazily down from the upper atmosphere, and the entire scene shimmered like it had been painted in glass. Lyra stood at the edge, hands clasped tightly behind her back, and watched. Her classmates leapt with effortless grace, chasing a sphere of gravitic energy that bounced and twisted unpredictably. The game was called Spiral Chase, a test of agility and communal rhythm. To play it properly required not just quick reflexes, but an intuitive sense of when to move, when to leap, when to yield to the group's flow. For Lyra, that rhythm never came. She had tried once, weeks ago. She remembered the sting of it. The awkward stumble, her claws scraping against the polished floor, the orb spinning past her while the others hissed laughter through their needle-sharp teeth. She hadn't been invited back. Not in words, but in glances, those cutting looks that told her she was better off standing apart. So she did, day after day. She stood at the edge of the field, her violet eyes following the arc of the glowing orb, her chest tightening with a strange mix of longing and shame. The bioluminescent trails of her peers painted living constellations above her head. Her own markings, faint and uneven, glimmered weakly on her pale skin. Too dim, too different. Watching again Lyra, one of the instructors had asked her once. Not unkindly, but not warmly either. It was a statement of fact, not an invitation. She had bowed her head and murmured something about learning through observation. The instructor had nodded, accepting the excuse. Everyone knew the truth, though Lyra did not belong. The academy was supposed to be a place where the brightest younglings from a dozen star systems came together, trained, learned to cooperate. But even among the Zyri, her own species, she was an outlier, quiet when she should have been spirited, hesitant when she should have been bold. Her family's bloodline was already considered diluted, touched generations ago by off-worlders. Some whispered it explained her dim markings, her frail frame. Others simply shrugged and ignored her. So she watched. The laughter rose again, loud and brilliant, cutting her like glass. She pressed her claws gently into her palms, grounding herself in the sting of it. It was easier to feel pain than emptiness. And then something new. A shadow broke across the courtyard. Not tall, not graceful, not marked with glowing trails. The figure stumbled a little as it stepped onto the practice field, shielding its eyes from the crystalline light. Its clothing was plain compared to the fluid silks of the Zyri, its skin dull and matte, and its gait entirely lacking the floating elegance of the others. A murmur swept through the players. The orb faltered in midair and dissolved into sparks. "A human," someone whispered. Lyra's heart jumped. She had heard of them, of course. Who hadn't? Humanity was the Academy's newest experiment in cross-species integration, fresh from the distant spiral arms where their noisy civilization sprouted like weeds. There had been endless debate about whether they were ready, whether they belonged among the ancient starfaring races. Loud, impulsive, too quick to laugh and too quick to fight. That was a common reputation. And now one of them stood there, alone. The human boy looked around, awkward and uncertain, a small pack slung over one shoulder. His eyes, so strange, so flat compared to the faceted brilliance of the Zyri, searched the field, and for a moment they caught hers. Lyra froze. He blinked, tilted his head, and then smiled. It was not the sharp grin of the Zyri, not the polite mass of the instructors. It was something else, soft, uneven, and startlingly warm. She looked away quickly, her cheeks burning beneath her pale skin. That had to have been a mistake. Surely he hadn't meant it for her. The instructors began speaking, formal introductions, explanations of rules and schedules. The other children clustered in groups, whispering, some giggling, others sneering. The human seemed unfazed, still wearing that crooked little smile, as if none of it touched him. When the gathering ended, the children drifted back to their game, resummoning the gravitic orb. The human lingered, watching them with interest. He looked lost for only a moment before stepping closer to the field. "You can't join," one of the Zyri boys snapped at him. "Not yet," Not until you learn. The human just shrugged. Then, teach me. Lyra's eyes widened. The audacity of it. The boy had no idea how badly that would go. The others would laugh, mock, tear him down until he gave up. That was how it always worked. That was how it had worked with her. And yet, he stepped onto the field anyway. Within minutes. It happened just as she had predicted. The orb darted toward him, and he lunged, arms outstretched. He stumbled, missed, collided with another child. Laughter erupted around him, high and cutting. Lyra felt her chest ache in sympathy. She wanted to look away, to spare herself the memory of her own failure replayed in his clumsy movements. But she couldn't. She couldn't stop watching. The human scrambled back to his feet, rubbing his elbow where he'd fallen. The laughter continued. And then he laughed too. Not cruelly, not bitterly. He just threw his head back and let out a sound that was loud, rough, unrefined, yet joyful. It wasn't the polished trill of the Zyri. It was raw, human, and it silenced the courtyard. For one suspended moment, even Lyra forgot to breathe. Then the boy grinned, crooked and reckless, and shouted, "Okay, maybe I'm terrible at this, but give me another shot." The instructors looked uneasy. The other children exchanged glances, half amused, half bewildered. And Lyra felt something stir inside her chest, something she hadn't felt in so long. She almost didn't recognize it. It was small, fragile, trembling at the edges of her lips. A smile. The game resumed, though not with the same easy rhythm. The human had shaken the balance, if only by refusing to be humiliated. Lyra remained at the edge of the field, still clutching her hands behind her back, still fighting the unfamiliar twitch at her lips. She hadn't smiled in months, maybe longer, when the orb arced high into the air, glowing against the crystalline sky. She stole another glance at the human. He was clumsy, yes. His movements lacked the flowing precision of the Zyri, and he often lunged when he should have pivoted, stumbled when he should have leapt. But he didn't stop. Each failure rolled off him like water on crystal. He laughed at himself, shook his head, tried again. The others weren't sure what to make of him. Some grew annoyed, their trills sharp with disdain. Others found it amusing, as if the human were some strange new creature brought for their entertainment. But none of them offered help. None of them taught him. Lyra could see the frustration building in his movements. He covered with smiles and loud humor, but she could read the small tells, the clench of his jaw, the slight slump of his shoulders. She knew what it was like to be the one who didn't belong. When the instructors finally called an end to the game, the children drifted toward the dining halls in flocks, their bioluminescent trails shimmering in soft patterns of conversation. The human lingered at the edge of the field, bent over to catch his breath. His plain academy-issued tunic clung with sweat, and his dark hair stuck to his forehead. Lyra hesitated. Her claws pricked lightly against her palms. It would be easier to leave, to fade into the shadows as she always did. But her feet refused to move. The human straightened, turned, and saw her. Their eyes met again. This time, he didn't just smile from afar. He raised his hand and waved. A simple gesture, awkward and small, but directed at her. Lyra blinked, startled. No one ever waved at her. "Hey!" he called, his voice carrying across the quiet courtyard. His accent was strange, each word less melodic than the flowing Zyri tongue, but warm in its own way. "You were watching, right?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to slip away before he could drag her into the spotlight. But his gaze was steady, patient, not mocking. "Yes," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. His smile widened. "Good. Then maybe you can tell me what I'm doing wrong." Her claws dug into her palms again, grounding her. "Wrong. In the game." He gestured back to the field. "I kept tripping over myself. I couldn't tell if the others were laughing because I was slow or because I looked ridiculous." Lyra's first instinct was silence, but something about the openness of his expression tugged at her. He wasn't demanding. He was asking. "You move too quickly," she said at last. "Spiral chase is about rhythm. You rushed where you should have waited. The orb reacts to balance." "Balance," he repeated, tasting the word. "Okay, That makes sense. His brow furrowed in thought. Then he nodded. Thanks. He stepped closer, and she instinctively shifted back. His movements were strange, too solid, too grounded compared to the floating grace of his eyrie. But he didn't seem offended by her retreat. He just stopped at a respectful distance and grinned again. I'm Aaron, by the way, he said. Aaron Hayes. You? Her mouth felt dry. Names were power, her people often said. To share one was a risk. But he had offered his freely, without hesitation. Lyra, she said softly. Lyra. He repeated it carefully, rolling the syllables with his flat human tongue. Pretty name. Her cheeks warmed again, and she quickly looked away. No one had ever said that to her. They stood in silence for a moment. The other children's laughter drifted from the dining hall, muffled by distance. Aaron shifted his pack from one shoulder to the other. You don't play, he asked. Lyra shook her head. I don't belong. Aaron tilted his head, as if the concept puzzled him. Why not? The question struck her harder than she expected. No one had ever asked why. The others simply accepted her exclusion as natural, inevitable. Even she had come to believe it. My markings are dim, she said at last, lowering her gaze. I am weaker than the others. Slower. Different. Aaron snorted. The sound was inelegant, almost rude, but his eyes sparkled with mischief. Different doesn't mean bad. It just means you play the game your way. Lyra stared at him, stunned by the simplicity of it. To the Zaire, difference was deficiency. To him, it was possibility. Before she could form a response, he slung his pack higher and grinned again. Tell you what, tomorrow you teach me how to not fall on my face. In return, I'll teach you a game from Earth. Deal. Her chest fluttered. A deal. An exchange. Something she was part of, not excluded from. She hesitated, fear and longing warring inside her. Deal. Aaron's smile softened into something less mischievous, more genuine. He gave her a small nod, then turned toward the dining hall. See you tomorrow, Lyra. She watched him go, his steps clumsy but confident, and for the first time in years, she felt a faint weight of anticipation pressing pleasantly against her ribs. When she finally walked back to her quarters, the memory of his smile followed her, and against all odds, she found herself smiling too. The next afternoon, Lyra returned to courtyard earlier than usual. The crystalline dust shimmered faintly in the sunlight, drifting down in pale threads that glittered across the stone tiles. Normally, she dreaded this place, dreaded standing alone while the others soared and laughed without her. But today her steps carried a strange, nervous energy. He had said he would come. She told herself not to expect it. Humans were unpredictable. Her instructors often warned, too quick to make promises, too quick to break them. And yet her claws tapped anxiously against her palms as she scanned the empty field, her violet eyes searching for dark hair, plain clothes, that crooked grin. Hey! The shout startled her. She turned to see him jogging across the courtyard, a ball clutched under one arm. Not the gravitic orb of Spiral Chase. This one was solid, round, patched together with some kind of coarse fabric. Aaron waved as he approached, then held up the ball. Brought something for later. But first, you're the teacher, right? Time for Spiral Chase 101. Lyra blinked. No one had ever asked her to teach before. She hesitated, unsure how to respond, until Aaron plopped the ball onto the ground and dusted his hands. All right, Sensei Lyra, where do we start? The honorific confused her, but the expectant look in his eyes left her no room to retreat. She swallowed, then stepped closer to the field center. It begins with balance, she said quietly. The orb reacts to weight and rhythm. You must not chase it. You must invite it. Invite it, Aaron repeated, nodding as if this were perfectly reasonable. She summoned a small gravitic orb, her markings flickering faintly with the effort. The pale sphere shimmered in the air, tugging gently against the courtyard's gravity well. Lyra extended her hand and let it float just beyond her fingertips. See? If you rush, it flees. If you move with it, it follows. Aaron leaned closer, eyes wide. That's kind of beautiful. Her cheeks warmed. She shifted her focus back to the orb. Try. Aaron stepped forward, hand outstretched. He lunged too fast, and the orb shot upward, spinning away from him. He laughed, shaking his head. Okay, I get it. Don't chase. Invite. Again and again he tried. Each failure drew another laugh from him, rough but genuine. Lyra found herself relaxing, the weight in her chest loosening with every chuckle. She corrected him gently, pointing out his stance, the angle of his hands. Slowly, clumsily, he began to adjust, and then, for the first time, the orb drifted toward him instead of fleeing. His fingers brushed against its surface. Yes, he shouted, throwing his arms up. Did you see that? Lyra startled at his enthusiasm, but then, without meaning to, she laughed. A small, fragile sound, but real. Aaron froze, staring at her with wide eyes. You just laughed. The warmth in her cheeks spread across her entire face. She looked away quickly. It was nothing. No way. That was definitely a laugh. And it was great. She shook her head, trying to hide the smile tugging at her lips. You are foolish. Absolutely, Aaron said proudly. But if I can make you laugh again, it's worth it. Her heart fluttered in a way she didn't understand. After another round of spiral chase practice, ending as usual, with Aaron flat on his back, grinning despite his bruises, he grabbed the fabric ball he had brought. Okay, your turn. My game. Lyra frowned at the strange object. What is it? It's called catch. He tossed the ball lightly into the air, caught it again. Super simple. I throw it to you, you throw it back. No balance, no glowing orbs, no rules except don't drop it. That is a game? Hey, don't knock it till you try it. He underhanded the ball toward her. Instinctively, she flinched. The ball bounced harmlessly off her chest and rolled across the courtyard. Aaron winced. Sorry, should have given you a heads up. She bent to pick it up, surprised at the rough texture beneath her claws. It was warm from his hands. Now throw it back, he said. Awkwardly, she tossed it. It wobbled through the air and fell short. Aaron jogged to scoop it up, then threw it again, this time more gently. Back and forth they played, the rhythm clumsy at first. But gradually, Lyra's throws grew steadier, her catches more confident. The ball thumped between them in a steady beat. See, Aaron said, panting slightly as he caught another throw. Easy. Fun, right? Lyra hesitated. The game was so simple compared to Spiral Chase, so unrefined. And yet, she realized her chest felt lighter, her shoulders less tense. Each time the ball left her hands, Aaron's grin widened, and each time it smacked into her palms, she found herself anticipating the next. It is not unpleasant, she admitted. Aaron laughed, flopping onto the ground dramatically. High praise, not unpleasant. That's practically a rave review. This time, her laugh came more easily. The sun dipped lower, painting the crystalline dust in shades of amber and rose. The courtyard, once a place of exile, now echoed with their voices, his loud and carefree, hers soft but growing steadier. When the chime rang to summon them back inside, Aaron climbed his feet and slung the ball over his shoulder. Same time tomorrow? Lyra paused. Part of her still whispered that this was dangerous, that the others would notice, that she would be scolded for wasting time with a human. But another part, a fragile, hopeful part, clung to the memory of her own laughter. Yes, she said softly. Tomorrow. Aaron's grin widened. Deal. As he walked away, Lyra pressed a hand against her chest, feeling the unfamiliar warmth there. For the first time since she could remember, she didn't dread the next day. She longed for it. The courtyard no longer felt like a prison. For weeks, it had become a sanctuary instead. A place of laughter, bruised knees, and the thump of a patched fabric ball bouncing between two unlikely friends. Every afternoon, Lyra and Aaron met there. Sometimes they practiced Spiral Chase, Aaron stumbling, but slowly learning to move with the orb instead of against it. Sometimes they played catch, simple and silly, until her hands stung from the effort. Other times, Aaron would simply tell her stories of Earth, of oceans so vast the water touched the sky, of trees taller than towers, of festivals where people gathered not in silence, but in music, fire, and dancing. And Lyra, she found herself talking too. Hesitant at first, but gradually more freely. She told him of her people's crystalline cities, of the constellations her mother had once traced with her faintly glowing hand. She confessed how it felt to always stand at the edge, to never be invited in. Aaron never mocked, never dismissed. He only listened, eyes bright with curiosity. It was a fragile happiness, and like all fragile things, it drew cracks. The first signs came from the other students. Their whispers grew sharper, more obvious. She saw the way they looked at her when she entered the hall, their bioluminescent trails flickering with mocking patterns only the Zyri could read. They laughed at Aaron's clumsy movements, at his too loud voice, and now they laughed at her too, for lowering herself to his level. One afternoon, as she and Aaron left the courtyard together, a group of Zyri blocked their path. Their leader, a boy whose markings blazed in brilliant spirals, sneered at her. Dim-marked, he hissed, the insult burning hotter than the sun. You hide in the shadows for years, and now you crawl out to cling to a human? Pathetic. Lyra froze, claws digging into her palms. Her markings flickered weakly, betraying her shame. Aaron stepped forward before she could speak. You've got a problem with her? His voice was calm but firm. Then you got a problem with me. The boy's laughter cut sharp and cruel. What could a human do? Fall on your face again? Maybe you belong together. Two mistakes, side by side. Aaron's jaw tightened. For a moment, Lyra feared he might lash out physically. Humans were said to be quick to anger, but instead he smiled. Not his usual warm grin, but something sharper. Maybe we are mistakes, he said, but at least we're not cowards who need a crowd to feel strong. The boy's markings flared, and for a heartbeat, Lyra thought a fight would erupt. But an instructor's voice called from across the hall, scattering the group before it began. Still, the whispers didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder. The next day, Lyra was summoned to the instructor's chamber. The room glowed with crystalline light, casting long shadows across the polished floor. 3 elders stood before her, their markings vibrant with age and authority. Lyra, the eldest began, his voice low but firm. We have observed your association with a human. Her throat tightened. She bowed her head. Yes, instructor. It is concerning, another said. You isolate yourself from your own peers, yet devote time to him. The humans are impulsive, disruptive. Their ways are not our ways. Do you understand? She nodded, though her chest ached. You must consider your place, the eldest continued. Your markings are already dim. You walk a fragile path. To align yourself with one of them may further harm your standing. Perhaps you should distance yourself. The words cut deep, sharper than any insult from her peers. Distance herself? From the one person who had made her laugh, who had given her a reason to step out of the shadows. Yes, instructor, she whispered, though the words tasted like ash. When she left the chamber, Aaron was waiting by the courtyard steps. One look at her face, and his smile faded. What happened? She shook her head, unable to meet his gaze. Nothing. I cannot stay long today. He frowned. Lyra, I should go. Her voice cracked, but she forced herself to turn away. That night, she lay awake in her quarters, staring at the faint glow of her markings. They pulsed weakly like dying stars. She thought of Aaron's stories, his laughter, the warmth in his eyes when he called her name. And she thought of the instructor's warning. The sneers of her peers, the weight of her people's judgment pressing down on her. Belonging. She had always wanted it. But belonging, it seemed, meant silence. Stillness. Loneliness. The next afternoon, she didn't go to the courtyard. She stayed in her room, claws pressed against her chest, trying to convince herself it was better this way. Safer. Wiser. But when she closed her eyes, all she saw was his grin. All she heard was his laugh. On the second day, she told herself she would stay again. Yet her feet carried her to the courtyard anyway. It was empty. The third day, she lingered by the edge, heart hammering. And then, thought you weren't coming back. She spun. Aaron leaned against the courtyard wall, the patched fabric ball tucked under one arm. His smile was softer this time, tinged with something she couldn't quite name. Her voice faltered. The instructors. Yeah, I figured. He shrugged. They don't like me much either. Lyra's throat tightened. Maybe it is better if... No, his voice was firm, cutting through her fear. Listen, Lyra, if you don't want to see me, I'll walk away right now. But if you do... He held up the ball, bouncing it lightly against his palm. Then forget what they say. Forget what anyone says. Just say the word and we'll play. The courtyard was silent, but for the soft thump of the ball. Her claws dug into her palms. Fear screamed at her to walk away. But another voice, quieter, steadier, rose inside her. The voice that had laughed. The voice that had smiled. Her lips trembled. Then she whispered, "Play." Aaron's grin returned, bright and unrestrained. He tossed her the ball, and when it landed in her hands, the weight of loneliness lifted just a little. For the first time, Lyra realized she didn't want to belong to a group that demanded her silence. She wanted to belong to a friendship that gave her a reason to smile.